Hey everybody, I have had something rolling around in my head since last night, and I've been thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about how to word it into a video or how to make it into a topic discussion of a video, and I'm having a really hard time putting words around it, so I'm going to try again and bear with me. What I'm talking about is the fact that I saw one of my old little sort of micro gardens that I had built for my 20-gallon open-topped office tank. My regular viewers remember back over the summer I put together a little garden and I set it on top of the filter, and it looked pretty cool for a day or two, and slowly but surely it just sort of started fading away because I kind of lost interest in it. And the only real point to that was that it was something to do for that afternoon. I was just bored, I was looking at my tank, I was tinkering around with it. And to me, I didn't see that as being much different than a cut flower arrangement. You know, I'll go out and spend some time putting together an arrangement in a vase. It lasts for a week on the counter, and when the flowers are starting to get past their prime, I throw it away. And that doesn't mean it was a failure. It served the purpose I wanted it to. And that little micro garden that I'd set up on top of my filter on my 20-gallon in the office did the exact same thing. It served its purpose for the day. I had a lot of fun with it. I was able to shoot some video about it. I was able to talk about it in the terms of encouragement, sort of like, look how easy this is. You can just put something like this together. And had I maintained it, I could have kept it alive, but a little tiny micro garden like that requires a lot of fiddly responsibility, and you got to water it multiple times a day because it dries out so fast. And I never really expected it to live very long. If it did, it did. If it didn't, it didn't. The point I'm getting to, or at least attempting to get to, is that that could very well be deemed a failure in a lot of people's eyes. And that aside, there's a lot of other things I have tried in the past that I would even deem as being a failure. I've attempted to grow certain plants and they just never really took off in my tank. I've tried to incorporate different pieces of woodwork into tanks that just never really worked out right. In fact, I've got a great big piece in my New World tank right now that just doesn't look right, and I gotta have to get it back out of there and everything. And so in a sense, that's a failure. You know, I thought it would look good, but it didn't. I've got prototypes of my waterfall tank here that actually leaked, and I never put them together properly, and it didn't work right. And then, of course, we always have failures when it comes to keeping fish. You know, I've tried to keep fish that were maybe a little beyond my scope of experience at the time, and I was unable to keep them alive or whatever. And of course, those are the worst kinds of failures when you're talking about this hobby. But the whole point is that you can't be afraid to fail and enjoy this hobby at the same time. Anytime you want to step it up to the next level, whether it's changing over from artificial plants and now you want to try putting some live plants in your tank, not necessarily a lot of risk associated with that, but it's going to change the dynamics of your tank, and some of the plants may not work out, and if you don't have experience with maintaining the tank that way, you know, it may result in not what you had hoped for. Again, do you call that a failure, or do you just chalk that up to experience? And I chalk all this kind of stuff up to experience, even if it is a failure, and if you want to label it that way, that's okay. Like again, my point is don't be afraid of failure. I'm not denying the failure. I'm simply embracing it and saying, okay, well, that didn't work. What can I do next time to hopefully make it work? You know, maybe I need to rethink my skill level or whatever. It allows me to step back and make for an adjustment when I've had a failure. And of course, when you talk about things like I tried to build a little waterfall, and when I did a test run in the backyard, it leaked, and so that was a failure. You know, that was just a fun way to spend the afternoon. It was maybe a waste of some glue and some, construction paper or whatever you want to say. I wasted some supplies tinkering around, but I spent the whole afternoon having fun out in the backyard for a few dollars worth of spray foam, you know. I don't really see that as being a failure either. I mean, people spend $25-30 to go to the movies for a couple of hours, whereas I can spend the afternoon in my backyard putting a little micro garden together that might last me a week or so before it finally dies off. And so it died, but I still had fun. I still got to experiment. And if I was really trying to improve my little micro gardening techniques, I would have learned from why did it die off. Should I have watered it more? Should I have watered it less? Was it too hot, too much light, not enough light? And I could have experimented from there, because this is a hobby. I always try to express that to people, that this is not some static thing that we do. We don't just set up a fish tank and then walk away and admire it from afar. It's a hobby. We like to do things with it, and I would much rather spend my time tinkering around with things that aren't going to kill my fish. And when I was early in the hobby, I tinkered around with my tanks way too much. I tinkered around with the filters, and I tinkered around with cleaning them and gravel vacuuming, and I always wanted to do something. You know, I come in, I didn't want to just stand and stare at my fish tanks. I wanted to do something with my fish tanks. And that usually ends in, you know, when you're just tinkering for the sake of tinkering because you're bored, you know, that can end in the kind of, you know, mistakes that are, you know, bad for your fish. So for me to spend an afternoon tinkering around with a waterfall, or trying to, you know, design a new way to hang plants on the side of my tank, or maybe try to build some cave structure out of foam or something, you know, whatever. Just there's endless amount of things I've done over the years. And if you walk around my house, my basement, outside, you'll see the leftover remnants of many of them that never got off the ground. They never worked, or I lost interest halfway through because I could see it wasn't going to work. And again, to me, that's all part of the hobby. So if you think about those kinds of things as failures, and you allow that to discourage you from enjoying the hobby, then, you know, I just think that's a real shame. I don't think about that kind of stuff as failures, or again, even if I do, I just sort of embrace that failure and say, how can I make it better the next time? So don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to experiment. Again, when you're experimenting with the kind of stuff that can directly impact the health of your fish, you know, think about that, keep that in mind, take that into consideration before you go willy-nilly experimenting. But if you want to spend the afternoon trying to figure out a way to design some little thing that makes your filter flow into some waterfall-y kind of thing, have fun. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So what? You got to spend the afternoon having fun, tinkering around with your hobby. It's good, creative juices in your mind. It might give you some ideas of how to do it better next time. That's what this is. It's a hobby. You're supposed to be doing that kind of stuff. So make sure you enjoy it. Don't be afraid to fail. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you real soon in the next one. Thanks for watching this one.